Wells knows that the English language contains more than, are you ready for it? 1,000,000 words. Unfortunately, that's also the number of different hobbies and subjects she's interested in. As you might imagine, these interests present certain challenges which she'll share with us tonight. The title of her speech is Learn a New Language and For Your Friends. Please welcome speaker number 2, Terri Wells.
I'm going to ask again, raise your hand, if you speak more than one language. Okay, I see a few hands. Some of you, however, are lying. Consider Koki Kubo, your friend and mine in the club. We all know that he speaks 3 languages: Japanese, Google Translate, and accrual accounting. Now, I know what you're thinking. 2 of those aren't real languages, but in a sense, they are. See, every time we learn something new, we learn the language that goes along with it. We might pick up a new hobby, train on a new software program, or even delve into a new multi-series book from our favorite author. Sometimes we learn completely new words, such as internet or email that didn't exist before. Other times, we learn new meanings for words we already knew, like cloud or window. And often, we learn new uses for old words that you can't repeat in polite company. You all know what I'm talking about, right? Have you ever tried to pull a warp yarn through a heddle on a 4-harness table loom with a threading hook? Okay, you're looking at me blankly because I just spoke in a language you don't understand. And frankly, since I'm just learning how to weave with these tools, I barely understand it myself. But boy, you definitely understand what I was muttering under my breath while I was doing it. I'm a Toastmaster, obviously. So why did I deliberately slip into another language there? Don't I know better? Of course I do. Most of you aren't interested in learning how to weave, but I bet you are interested in getting your message across to your audience. And if you want to do that, you need to know not only what your audience wants to hear, but what they can hear. Let me give you an example from earlier in my Toastmasters career. Back then, I was working in what we now call the legacy system out of the advanced manual Speaking to Inform. I presented the demonstration talk, which involved explaining or demonstrating how to make or do something. It could be anything. Being a crafter, I decided that I would explain how to do kumihimo. This is a Japanese braiding technique that you can use to make beautiful multi-stranded cords. You can even use it to make jewelry. Cool stuff, right? So I rehearsed. I made a prop kumihimo wheel large enough to be seen from the back of the room. I put my yarn on the wheel and I demonstrated step by step the process of making a kumihimo braid. I even got my audience repeating each step of the process with me as I made the braid. When I got to the end of my presentation, I will never forget that my evaluator asked the audience to raise their hands if they now immediately wanted to rush out and get started doing kumihimo. Not a single hand went up. I was devastated. No joke. Now, I did receive a number of excellent suggestions. And if I ever give that speech again, you can bet I'll use them. Looking back on it, what I take away from that project is that you need more than your own enthusiasm to bring your audience along with you. You need to speak their language. As the presenter, you're also a translator. You need to give them a good reason to care, to actually want to learn the language. And when you're trying to convince someone to learn this new language, it helps a lot if you know their native language. Of course, I'm not talking about English or Spanish or French or Portuguese, though of course that helps. I once had to give a talk about making lace in French, but that's another story for another time, and I digress. What I mean is that it helps to know their interests, their demographics, and their beliefs, their knowledge base. What matters to them? What's relevant? Maybe if I explain to my audience that doing kumihimo is a great way to relax, or something they could do with their kids, or even let them use proper kumihimo wheels themselves so they can experience it directly, I might have gotten a better reception. Which brings me to my next point. Sometimes your friends are your audience. And when you're just learning a new language, despite all the struggles, if you're excited about it, you may want to practice it with your friends. They're required to listen because they're your friends, right? Well, hold up a minute. When was the last time you had to extract yourself from a boring conversation? Is it possible that your conversation partner raved on about a topic that held as much interest for you as threading a four-harness table loom? Yeah, I'm not saying I don't share your enthusiasms. I'm just encouraging you to be transparent. Let them know that, let them know that they're talking about an obsession that you're not quite so interested in. Let them know when you've heard enough. Chances are you know lots of other people who are speaking this new language, and they won't give you the blank looks like your friends will when you've turned an artful phrase in your new tongue. Since I picked up a lot of hobbies, I mean a lot of hobbies, I know about this firsthand. I'm also a bit of a word nerd, which makes learning new languages even more dangerous. I enjoy double entendres, but putting a risque spin on new words gets, well, risky. I mean, this is Florida. Go people watching on the beach with your friends and tell one of them I wouldn't mind him putting his shuttle through my shed, and they will think you're talking about a US spaceship crashing through the place you keep your gardening tools. To sum up, 1, don't assume your audience speaks your language, even if they're your friends. 2, make sure you know their language. 3, use that knowledge to give them reasons to want to learn your language. Because really, who wants to bore their friends? Madam Toastmaster.
Lots of new words in that presentation. I've learned a few that I think I'm going to use elsewhere. Let's get our facilitator, Fred Bergeron, back on board to help provide some constructive criticism for you. Go ahead, Fred.
Thank you, Madam Master of Ceremonies. And just like before, those I call on, feel free to add any clever tidbits to Terry's speech. So we're going to start with Vivian, then we're going to move on to Rajiv, and then end with Kennedy. So take it away, Vivian.
All right, hold on. Let me fix my mic here. Give me like 3 seconds, okay? Hold on. That's 1, 2, 3. Got it. All right. So my best advice is don't think that you know what you think you know. I'm not giving you a theory. I'm telling you how I burned, okay? Because think about this. You see someone who is Filipino, is in the Philippines, but was not educated in a Philippine school, speaks 4 languages, and is in California meetings. You think the audience knows how to read me? No. Then all my jokes are American because I studied the American school. And the Filipinos are horrified. They tell me I'm coming in too strong because I'm supposed to be a demure granny at 71. So those are some things you would like to consider. Figure out what planet some characters are from. in your audience. I have burned in more ways than one. Trust me. Listen and learn to someone who's triple burned. Love from Manila.
Thank you, Vivian. We'll now move on to Rajiv.
Terry, that was a wonderful speech where you explained really well as to it's not just the language, the basic language that we speak. Is about being relevant to your audience, and I think that was the example you gave was really connecting, and that explained really well. By way of just one recommendation, I would feel is that you can be so much more effective if I wish you leave your notes aside, because particularly for that story, it was your story, you knew it. Just give it to us. It felt you're reading it, and I mean, I think you were reading it, and that took away a little bit of that impact from your speech. But otherwise, I felt the examples were really good, and you made the point quite strongly.
Thank you, Rajiv. And rounding it out, Kennedy.
Not to be a fever to Bejibit, but I feel that we all need that same advice where as Toastmasters, we should all go towards speaking our speech instead of delivering our speech or reading our speech, because there's a different skill in being able to recall from pointers, outline, and being able to talk about it without notes, or else we'll be just reader masters instead of Toastmasters. But in any case, that was a very good point you made about language being, I lost my notes because I didn't read it. Anyway, the point I was making is that language is indeed very impactful to all of us. That's why we're all here. We want to be able to not only read it, but also speak it very well. And especially as Toastmasters, being able to extemporaneously speak it. Back to you, Freddie.
Thank you, Kennedy. And I will return control back to our Master or Mistress of Ceremonies, Vicki Goodman.
Thank you so much for that great information